Hello and welcome to this video and to September's book review. I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to talk coherently about the books I read in September, because I'm actually filming this on like the 7th of October and I've finished a book for the month. So that's the one that's in my head, not the one that I read like over a month ago. I read 4 books in the month of September, which seems to be sort of my average at the moment, which I'm pretty happy with, but I only have 2 to hold up. I've lent one to my mum and one was on my Kindle, so I'll just have to put pictures for those ones. So the first book that I read in September was The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman. This is the one that I've lent to my mum. It's the 3rd book in the Thursday Murder Club series, which follows a group of old people in a retirement village as they go about solving crimes. And I really liked the first one. The second one I was less keen on, and then this one I have enjoyed again because I liked the fact that we were doing a murder again. So the second one we're not following a murder case, in this one we are, and I much prefer that. I also love being back with the gang. Joyce will always be and will remain my favourite, but it's nice that we got a bit more background from some of the others, a bit more from Ron and a bit more from Ibrahim in this book. Let's be honest though, the books are pretty farcical. It's about a bunch of geriatrics going around solving crimes. There's also a whole host of other characters, like there's a big cast to these books and it just seems to get bigger with every book that you get, but they're fun and they do cover some sort of deeper themes at times, but largely it's full of British humour and silliness and yeah, just a fun read. And I think this one might be my favourite, maybe. I'd have to reread the first one, it would be between the two of them. Mentioning the cast of characters, I'm not sure if we're getting just a bit too big now, particularly as we change perspective, so we get perspective from loads of different people, and it can get a bit, not confusing because I know most of them and we follow it and all of that kind of stuff, but there just feels like maybe a few too many people now. But I still liked the way it was written and that kind of stuff. It is like a chunkier book for me to have read this year. I'm not typically going over sort of the 360 mark, and I think this was closer to 400, but it was super quick to read. It kept me gripped and I wanted to carry on reading it, and yeah, I just enjoyed it a lot. And there were just some small details in it that appealed to me. So they would go to a TV recording in Elstree, which was near where we lived. I also did some work experience on the EastEnders set, which is based in Elstree, so all the bits where they're talking about the Wimpy and stuff just meant more to me because I knew exactly where they were and what they were talking about. And there's just sort of little details like that that I appreciated a lot. I'm looking forward to continuing the series. I don't actually have the next book yet, but it is on my Christmas list, and I've heard that one is like the best in the series so far, and at points a bit moving, so I'm intrigued to see where it goes. And I know there's also a film coming out which I'm looking forward to, although I disagree with the casting of Ron, but the others I think are pretty accurate. But yeah, so that was The Bullet That Missed, and that is the 3rd book in the Thursday Murder Club series by Richard Osman, and the first book I read in September. The next book I read was on my Kindle, and that was Deadly Offerings by Alexa Grace. So as you know, we went on holiday, hence why this book review is later. So we went to Copenhagen, so I was reading on my Kindle. I didn't know what to read, and there's quite a lot of books on there, so I just got Pete to pick a number between 1 and whatever my big long TBR is, including my Kindle, and took about 3 or 4 attempts because he picked a series. The sequel to that series that I'm not currently reading is the Bridgerton ones that you can see here. Then he picked a Christmas book, and then finally he came to Deadly Offerings by Alexa Grace, which is a suspense romance, I think is how they class it. Basically, was it a thriller, was it a romance, was my feeling on this. It didn't seem to know which one it was, so it tried to do both but didn't do either well. It needed to have more of a focus because it was a bit jolting going from the thriller aspect to the romance aspect. So we're following our main character, whose name I can't remember, and she is moved into a farm after a bad breakup with her ex-husband, and someone is leaving dead bodies in her land and threatening notes to her, saying that she'll be next and stuff. And one of the people, he's not the he's like the city prosecutor or something like that, was the person who was representing her husband in that divorce case, is now the city prosecutor in this area, and that's who the romance ends up being with. But in it everyone seemed to have a love interest, so I'm guessing she's going to do a series of these with other people, but I won't be partaking in that. This book is one of those ones that's been on my Kindle forever. I think it was one of the free ones I got when I first got my Kindle. You've seen a few of those if you've been with me and you've followed these book reviews over the last year. I've read a few of them now. None of them are that great, to be honest, but this one was alright. It was enjoyable enough. It was an interesting concept which could have been done really well, it wasn't executed. I do think this is a debut, so maybe she'd get better, but I'm just not interested in carrying on with the series. And there are so many guns in this book. I mean, it is set in America, so what do I expect? But everybody and everything seems to have a gun and is going to use it. Was easy enough to read. I read it on the time that we were on holiday, which I was surprised. I didn't think I would actually finish a book while we were there. Because obviously it's a city break, we were out all day, we had Eloise, but I read it all. It was very easy and it was enjoyable enough for the time that I read it, but it really hasn't left a lasting impression. So that was Deadly Offerings by Alexa Grace. Then we come to the first book that I can actually hold up, and again, if you've been following for the last, how many books are in this series? 1, 2, 3, 3 months, you'll know that I am working my way through the selection series. I'm doing one a month, so September's book was The Heir, which is the 4th book in this series. The selection is a competition essentially to win the crown, and in the first 3 books we're following America and Maxon. Maxon is the prince, America is part of the selection, where one girl from each of the districts or whatever they call them in this book is selected and then is in a competition to win his heart. However, in this one, and if you don't want spoilers for that series, skip ahead until I'm holding the next book, but in this one we're following their daughter as she goes through her own selection as a sort of distraction to the unrest that's going on, and she doesn't want to have a husband and fall in love. She's also the first female to go through the selection. And I like the fact that we're back in a selection competition. That's what I sort of felt the latter books in the first 3 lacked. The selection of the first is my favourite in the series, and that's partly because of the competition element. So it's nice to be back in that, and it's also interesting to be from the perspective of the selector, not the selected. The person choosing the partner, not the person trying to be the partner, if that makes sense. However, I don't feel like you get a lot of understanding of who the 35 men are that she's with in this, which I suppose is the downfall of being with the person choosing, because it means there are too many other characters to introduce, whereas you don't really need to know the other women in the selection part of it. There's too many of the same word and slightly different variations to try and follow with this one, I'm sorry. However, I don't really like Eidlin, I think is how you pronounce her name, very much. She's pretty selfish. She's obviously caught up in her own expectation of what she has to be and what she's got to do, that she just doesn't see anybody else or really has empathy for anyone else, and she's just not a particularly nice character. But I'm not sure if that is the point of her, so that you get an arc, I guess, because there is one more book which I'm reading this month. I'm actually starting that today as I'm filming, so maybe we get more of a character arc from her with that book as well. But she basically has a I'm not like other girls energy, which gets on my nerves. Kiera Cass seems to just rely on the same plot point, in that I like them, I don't like them, I like them, I don't like them, which got very frustrating in the other 3 books. we seem to be carrying it on with this one. It's a shame because that first book is great, and then the Elite is good, and then it just goes downhill from there. And I have a feeling I'm not going to enjoy the last one very much, but it's the last one, so we're going to go with it. This one also has an incredibly abrupt ending, which she might as well have just written it as one book, because the next one is like 250 pages. So I don't know why she just didn't put them all together as one story, but that's my opinion on it. Lots of people say don't bother with these. I potentially agree. Obviously I haven't finished it, but I'm not entirely sure there was a point to these stories anyway, but it's nice to see what happened to American Maxon as we move forward. So yeah, that was the Heir, and as I said, I'm reading the last one this month. So the final book that I read in September was Malibu Rising by Jenkins Reid. She's the author of Evelyn Hugo, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and Daisy Jones and the Six. I am in the, I think, minority in that Daisy Jones is my favourite of that one. I love that book. I mean, Evelyn Hugo's good, but not as good as Daisy Jones and the Six. And this one is probably my least favourite of the three that I've read of her books. So in this we're following the Reaver family. The dad, Mick, is like a big famous pop star. He has 4 children, but basically abandons them and isn't in their life at all. But they sort of semi-live on his name, but not really. They've all made careers largely in surfing, and they live in Malibu. And every year they have a massive party to sort of end the summer, and we're following that party, that day of the party. So we're in a 24-hour cycle of that day to find out. But we also get flashbacks to the past and all of that kind of stuff. And the reason I picked up this one was because I have Carrie Soto's back here, and I really want to read it because lots of people rave about it, and it's about tennis, and I'm a tennis fan. But I heard that she was in this one, and it's worth reading this one before going into that one. So that's what I did, although I did happen to read this very summery book just as the weather turned and got cold, so that didn't quite work out for me. With all the other Jenkins Reid books that I've read, it is very biographical. It could be very real. It could be a real family in the 80s doing this, rather than like a fiction, which I like. I like the fact that you really do get sucked in and that kind of stuff of them. And the way that she's written the family dynamic in this, like the relationship between the siblings, their relationship with their mum, their dad, and all of that kind of stuff, was very well done, and I enjoyed it a lot, and I did thoroughly. I mean, I really did enjoy this book. It's just not my favourite of the 3 that I have read of this author's. And the setting was fun. I just kind of wish I'd read it when it was slightly warmer. I'm not normally a seasonal reader, but this one I felt like I needed it to be warmer. I think it's because it just turned cold rather than it'd been cold a while and I just picked up a summery book to get the vibes kind of thing. As I mentioned, there are past timelines in this, and I liked that. It gave a really good, well-rounded view of the characters and how events in the past have influenced the future and that kind of stuff. So I thought that was well done. As I said, again, it's based around a party, which means there are a whole heap of characters, and Jenkins Reid tries to include some of their stories in it, but I kind of wanted to know more about their stories rather than just having a page or 2 of it and then we never hear about it again. I was like, yeah, but what happened to that? Why was that happening? I don't know whether the intention is to then write stories for each of the people, because obviously we get Carrie Soto back next, and she is mentioned in this but not as much as I thought. I'm not sure. I'll let you know when I read that one whether you do have to read this one to get an idea of her or whether not. So I don't know whether that's the intention for the books, because there is a lot of overlap with Daisy Jones and the Six and Evelyn Hugo in this. They are things from those books do crop up in this, which again, it's always fun when that happens in like timelines and stuff, in authors' work, where you go, oh, that that one's from that book, and obviously if you haven't read them it's not something that you pick up and it doesn't matter, but when you have read them it's like a nice little Easter egg for you. So as I said, did enjoy this a lot. Probably my favourite read. No, Richard Osman's my favourite read of the month, but this is a close second. I'm glad I finally got to it because it's been on my shelf for a while, and obviously I want to read Carrie Soto, but I always knew I had to read this one first, and that's why both of them have sat there for longer than maybe they would have done if that wasn't the case. But if you haven't tried a Taylor Jenkins read, I would recommend. They are very well written and they are enjoyable, but my preference would be Daisy Jones and the Six. But there we go. So that was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and the last book that I read in September. So it was a pretty decent month of reading. As I said, I have already finished a book in October, which I'm surprised about, but there we go. So I will share that with you next month, as we see where we get to for October. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please go ahead and click that subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!